I remember vividly, people were like, oh, that's so cool. You're going to the Olympics and it's going to be so cool. Have a great time and like take a lot of pictures. But it was kind of like, the slap on the butt, like, go enjoy yourself, but like, don't get your hopes up. From there, we went on this crazy world tour trying to qualify for the Olympics.
You could literally be 7th in the world, but 3rd from the US, and you weren't going to go to the Olympics.
You hear the noise of us not succeeding that well, not being great.
What's your internal dialogue at that moment where it's like, hey man, this might be a bust?
You had all this opportunity to get to this dream of making it and representing your country in the Olympics, but you couldn't do it, and now this is it.
How do you feel when your back is against the wall? I think for me, through sport especially, I really learned how to lock in, and I just don't think there's anything like it. It's those moments where you either perform or you blank out and give up. And I just love the feeling because in those moments, they really reveal just who you truly are, especially to yourself. I always said I got to know who I was in those moments. And my guest today is an Olympic gold medalist, Dain Blanton. He and his beach volleyball partner, Fonoimoana, hold the record for being the lowest seed to win a gold medal. And listen, I don't love the term underdog, but Dain really knows what it's like to have his back against the wall and to succeed beyond expectation. If you in your life are feeling overwhelmed and like you're at a decision point where you need to really take action and focus, or you're considering giving up, well, this episode is for you. Welcome to the Gabby Reece Show. Let's go. Dain Blanton, thanks for, I'm in your old neighborhood. This is where you went to college.
Yeah.
And I have known you for probably since about 1992, I think, 1993. Yeah, about then.
It's been over 30 years.
Yeah, that's a long time. You've been busy. You've done a lot in that time. And
we both have.
Yeah, but I feel like, when I look at your accomplishments, and I was obviously doing my homework, these are things I know about you already, but when you're getting ready to talk to somebody, you kind of really brush up and you go, oh yeah, and that and this. I have to say that you were a person who, there was a pioneering element to you coming into beach volleyball because you played basketball in high school, and given your talents, you probably could have played basketball. Maybe we could just start with why and did you choose volleyball? Because I'm sure everyone was like, well, you're from Long Beach, like you're going to play volleyball.
Right. So my family originally is from Manhattan in New York, and I have 2 older brothers, and they were actually born on the East Coast. But then my family decided to move west, and they moved to Laguna Canyon. I don't know if you know Laguna Beach well. There's where the Sawdust Festival and those art festivals. So we were right down in the canyon. And being in Orange County, volleyball is a big thing where it's not in other places. And my brother started playing. I started getting into it, realizing that if you just played on the beach, there was no sport really to play in terms of collegiate. So I was like, I better play club, and I played indoor, and I played basketball, like you said. But when it came down to it, I was like more Division III stuff in basketball, and volleyball, it was, the UCLA's and Stanford and Pepperdine. And it just, it felt good to go that route. And it was interesting, though, because you mentioned the pioneering side of it. I looked up to my brother, but on the professional circuit, there was no one that really looked like me. So I knew that I could blaze a different trail that had been blazed, and I really went for it all in, playing during the school year, club volleyball, summer on the beach, and watching guys like St. John Smith, or Randy Stoklos, or Karch Karai, realize like you can make a living doing this. And as you know, back then in the 80s and 90s, it was big time.
Yeah. You know what's interesting, though, for me as somebody who observed you in a parallel way, it's funny because you have like this beach culture that's like loosey-goosey and bro. And I mean, St. John's sort of very surgical, but Randy always had like that beach vibe. And what was interesting is you almost bring like an executive's attitude towards beach volleyball. So it was, here we are, we're talking about, you're one of the first I would say, professional Black players, right? But yet you were the most kind of executive. I thought you were almost not, I wouldn't say anti-beach culture, but you didn't fall into that bucket either, which I thought was a really beautiful and interesting extra bolt on to the whole part of the story.
Yeah, I guess I never looked at myself as executive. I was about business. I was very meticulous. I was always trying to learn something from the players that were already out there. And I think volleyball changed on the beach in the mid-90s when Karch Karai and Kent Steffes started to play together. So it went from a culture of hanging out at the beach all day long and relaxing, playing winners, I got next, to, hey, we're going to go down to the beach for 2 hours. Every player bring 20, 30 balls. We're going to side out, hundreds of times, and we're going to train, and then we're out of here. We're going to the next step, which would be strength and conditioning, and then you're handling your business. So it started becoming more of a career, more of a profession, more legitimate in terms of the seriousness, I think. And I saw that. I was very close with Kent Steffes, and seeing them win the gold medal in '96, you just knew they were doing something very right.
Yeah. Well, you're talking about, Karch has always that sort of meticulous preparation. You also, your college coach is exceptional.
Yeah.
So you chose to go to Pepperdine.
Mm-hmm. And the big reason I went to Pepperdine was Marv Dunphy, because he was just coming off of a hiatus or a sabbatical, I guess you would call it, from coaching at Pepperdine to taking the men's national team to a gold, and that was 88. Well, let's say Seoul.
Yeah.
Maybe? Seoul in 88.
Mm-hmm.
So he was the head coach, and he won a gold medal. And I knew that I wanted to be an Olympian one day, even though I had shelved it at the time, because beach volleyball was not an Olympic sport at that time in 1990 when I was entering college. So it was like picking the beach route, which I knew I wanted, kind of had to shelf that Olympic dream. And so in 94, I think it was, when they announced that beach volleyball would be part of the Olympics, it just was like, I was just a kid in a candy store, just like, oh my gosh, this dream could come true if I put enough effort into it. But knowing it would be a long shot because of the depth of the beach.
Yeah. And starting later, in the old days, now you have beach players. You coach beach players, but in the old days, you came from the indoor. Most people, except maybe Misty May and Holly McPeak and Karch, maybe played a little, and but very few people were beach players. They were to go to college, you played indoor, and then if you somehow did want to play in Europe, you came to the beach to play. So were you a 16-year-old kid who thought, I have a dream, I want to somehow make it to the Olympics? Was that ever a thought? And obviously it's you're not 9 feet tall.
Right. Well, like I said, I'd kind of shelved that dream because it wasn't a possibility at that age. Mm-hmm. But I was playing in all the CBVA events up and down California, trying to get my AAA rating and just trying to accomplish and be as great as I could. It was so funny. My brother, who has Kurt, who inspired me to play, I'd get him to play on weekends in tournaments, and everyone asked me how come Kurt didn't do the things that I did, because he was just as good a player or better. But for some reason, being the youngest, I think I had a drive that he didn't have, possibly being the middle child. So we would play in tournaments, and you know how it's a Saturday, Sunday type of thing. We would advance, and then Saturday night, he'd be like, do you really want to go back? And then Sunday morning, I'd be in his, room shaking him like, we got to go, let's go. But it wasn't the top of the list for him. He was a little more laid back. And I was this kind of the younger brother, always just fiery with a lot of enthusiasm. But he chose his path and has always been so supportive of me. Went to both the Olympics that I was involved with. And it's interesting, the mindset and how you get that mindset.
This podcast is brought to you by Bon Charge. So you know what I've been doing for 10 minutes almost every day? I've been wearing Bon Charge's red light face mask. I was curious about it before I talked to you guys about it. I really wanted to use it. And this is not like any other face mask. It really works. Red light therapy, I'm serious. I'm surprised how good it feels. It penetrates deep into the skin to boost collagen production, reduce inflammation, and really ease signs of aging. It's so easy to use because it's cordless and it's lightweight. It fits on your face comfortably. You can be sitting at your desk, doing some errands, getting it done. I even have given it to my daughters. And if you're curious about it, they have so many incredible products. You can add Bon Charge's red light face mask to your daily routine, or all you have to do is order one today. It's like a little at-home spa session. Right now, my listeners will get 15% off when you order from boncharge.com and use my exclusive code Gabby, Gabby, at checkout. The discount applies site-wide. I do have some headphones that I love from them as well. That's boncharge.com. You'll also get free shipping and a 12-month warranty. boncharge.com. And don't forget to use the promo code Gabby to get 15% off. This podcast is brought to you by Laird Superfood. This is a brand that was started in my kitchen in 2015, but specifically, I'm really excited to share with you a new product that we have. It's something I've been asking for. I don't need any copy to talk about this. I know about it right from my heart. Our protein creamer, 12 grams of vegan protein. It's so delicious and easy to use. And what we all know is food is king. If we can get it from our food, let's do it. It's hard to do. But also, if we can win our first and last kind of interaction with food or drink in the day, especially when it comes to protein, this is a win. So I just add it into my coffee right in the morning. It mixes easily, so it's not chalky or weird. It's so delicious. It really is just like a creamer, but it has 12 grams of protein. And it's got adaptogens. You can take it with you on the road. And I am so excited to share this product with you because it is something where in doing the show, it's actually reverse inspired and hearing over and over. And I don't want to say especially for females, but that we do seem to have a harder time getting that protein. We really need it. That I can go back to Laird Superfood and talk to the brand and talk to the food scientists and go, hey, this is something, can we experiment? And samples show up in the mail and we try it. And here we are. So voila, Laird Superfood has a beautiful new creamer powder that you can use, even if it's for a little pick-me-up in the day. If you're not a coffee drinker, you can throw it in your tea. It's just a great product. And you can find it at so many stores like Sprouts, but of course, you can always find it at lairdsuperfood.com, LAIRDSUPERFOOD.com. And if you use the code Gabby20, GABBY20, you will get 20% off your order. We have a running joke in our house that there has to be something a little wrong with you, I think, in a different way. It doesn't mean bad. It isn't even a negative thing, whether it's I have something to prove. Somebody told me I couldn't do it. I have to survive. This will be how I make my living. Whatever the million reasons are that make athletes go for what they're going for, very few are completely emotionally well-adjusted. And the impetus is, oh, I just love this game. I think there's always also an additional reason. Now, maybe once you get going, it becomes your craft, you're good at it. But I think sometimes that initial drive it actually comes from a place that's like a rub, that's friction. For you, maybe it was being the youngest, like I'm gonna play with these guys and I'm gonna get it done, which is maybe the healthiest of the reasons.
I agree with you. I think that anyone that does great things, I think initially they're looked at as like, you work a little too hard or you're obsessed. But I think to get to that level, if you just look at all the successful athletes, the Karch Karais, the Kobe Bryants, the Michael Jordans, the work ethic is, for a normal person, it's crazy.
Yeah. And it's also sometimes the collateral damage. People don't realize. For certain people.
Yeah.
I think there's a collateral. Well, let's go back. What did you learn, because this obviously comes into play later, from Marv as a coach? What did he do as a coach that you thought, okay, these are principles that I will take into my life, and that if I were ever to help anyone else, these are the ones that really are important?
I think the biggest thing with Marv that stands out for me is his consistency. He is always consistent. I don't know how close you are with Marv, but I've never seen him like lose it or get really animated and angry. And as a player, watching that consistency when you succeed or when you fail is empowering to the point of, you know, that there's times he wants to lose it, and there's times when he wants to get more excited, but he loves to be even keel. He used to always say, you got to avoid the peaks and valleys and try to be a little smoother. So if you look at that graph of a lot of this, it usually breeds more inconsistency. And so he was always very even keel. And I remember this one day we went into practice and we were kind of goofing off and doing our thing. And
you mean like 19-year-old boys goofing off?
Exactly. And he came in and we started practice and warm up and we started playing, but you could tell like the level wasn't really there. And he just said, shag him up or whatever. And I thought, you're getting ready to do the next drill.
On the line.
Yeah, or whatever. But he just like, practice over. And we love to play, right? Like all the guys that were on that team that when we won in the national championship in '92, especially, we'd love to play. And so as a player, like I remember going up to his office and I was like, Marv, like what happened? Like we didn't practice. And he's like, oh, he's just kind of, you guys are good today. Like not giving me an answer, but just his actions spoke so loud. Like, all right, you guys are coming today. You're not bringing it. You're not ready. We just won't practice. But I'm not saying we won't practice. That made it more impactful. There was no like
a big lecture.
I'm going to scold you for doing this. It was just like, which was so powerful. For me, the lesson was like, wow, like there's nothing,
the privilege to play. Yeah, and also and that's not his job.
Yeah.
You guys, see, this is for me, right? A coach that can teach the lesson without finger wagging, but you go in as an athlete and you have to like ask yourself what happened. But this idea of like your guys' job was to bring it and he would then run the practice.
Yeah.
It shows a lot of confidence to be able to not to have to explain it.
Yeah, but he had it. He had the kind of the years behind him. He had the experience. He knew how to execute something like that. And it stuck with, it sticks with me to this day as I coach as such a powerful lesson. And you hear a lot of Division I coaches say, like, my job isn't to make sure that you bring effort. Like that goes without saying. You better show up and bring effort every day or you're not going to be a part of this program. And it's interesting because so many athletes think they have what it takes to play a Division I sport, and then they get there and realize that they may have put themselves in the deep end.
Now, I'm going to just ask out of curiosity. None of my kids went this route. Believe me, the temptation to force it, push it was there. But I've also learned because it is hard. And you know how like you're talking about when you're young, you have the internal drive. I believe it really is going to come from the individual. So I'm going to provide all the opportunities. But if you're not biting those hooks, you're passionate about other things, I can accept that as a parent. Mm-hmm. But I have also seen, like, when I went to school and when you went to school, like my coach at the time, Cecile Renaud, it was like her word is law. That was it. You could ask questions. There was room for, discussion, but like she was the head of the ship. So I feel like with athletics, and I have friends that coach in other universities, the athletes have, I don't want to say more power, but it feels like it's a little more like they can rub against the coach.
Yeah.
So what I'm curious about, because it's like creating an army or going to battle, pretty much, you have to have a leader. The coach has to be the leader. They have to be given the room to be the leader. How do you, like hearing the story about Marv, how do you now do that in this day and age, 30 years later, with athletes where it is just a little different? How do you create that, like, no, actually I'm the guy.
Yeah.
I'm in charge.
I think the most important thing with coaching that I've come across is recruiting. You have to recruit top level character, effort, all of that. Marv had a quote he'd always say, you can have 1.5 knuckleheads on your team, but you can't have 2. And it's so true, because once you get 2, they're goofing off and they're pulling in the next person, and all of a sudden it's kind of a cancer and things change very quickly. So I've had to get rid of some players, and it has usually been addition by subtraction, because it would help everybody else. But I think, we're in a very different time now. The athlete has a lot more power than they did. The coach has to tap dance, for lack of a better term, a little more, because we're not in that space anymore where it's just drill sergeant, you come, you do what I say. So for me, I try to stay ahead of the curve, try to have people on the staff that are different and that athletes can interact with, because I don't want to hire 3 assistants that are just like me.
Right.
You want them to have a similar mindset that you have, but bring a different personality, so that the athlete may connect with that assistant better than they connect with me. Or but what I was going to say is, my biggest, I think, coaching philosophy is trying to empower the athlete so they have control. And I do that by usually getting a leadership group or a couple of captains that are an extension of my philosophy, and they know what I want. And then those other players can go to their captain, they can go to me, then go to another assistant. And then with the communications flowing, and you think you're part of this thing rather than I'm just a player, they're the coach. We're all in this together. We all figure it out. There's times when you as a player are going to have more intel than I do as a coach, because you're in it. I'm not in the locker room. I don't know what goes on. And so that back and forth, I think it's like pride and ownership, right? You own a house, it's a different ballgame. You go and rent a house, you're like, whatever. But when it's yours, then you can go to great places. And I think that's the trick, trying to empower the athletes so they say, like, this is mine, I own this, and I have some say in the direction of this unit.
Yeah, I think that's everything. It's even like in parenting. I tell my girls, I'm not here to control you, right? I'm here to teach you how to manage yourself, your wants, your goals, because that's the most effective and the only way it's really going to work anyway. It's harder in a different way also, because sometimes you just want to lock down and control and go, this is what we're doing. But you realize in the long run that this other way that you're talking about is better for everybody.
Yeah. And then I encourage the athlete to speak up and be an advocate and an agent for themselves. And, it's fascinating. I've been a head coach now for 5 years at USC. And sometimes the funniest thing is the parents.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It is just fascinating.
Is that the word you use at home when you talk to your wife? Like, let me tell you about a fascinating situation I had with a parent today.
And it's it's mind-boggling, some of the conversations you can have and their perspective. And it's, it's just, sometimes I'm just blown away. You think the kid is growing, and the student athlete's getting better, they're winning championships, but on the parent side, they
didn't take the course.
Yeah, they're like, my kid's not getting this or that, and it's fascinating. And then there's a whole community of the parents' interaction.
And do they have like a group text? I'm joking, but you know what I
who
mean.
knows?
It's like all
Who
that
knows?
extra community. Like, did your mother, or did anyone in your house ever? No, they go to your games.
Right.
They didn't.
You didn't.
They
You
didn't go,
get
hey,
on the
Coach
phone
Marv,
and try to advocate. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, so Pepperdine, your sophomore year, you guys win a national championship. Let's say win. You're a winner. Okay. You finish. You go to beach volleyball, and the story on you is your steadiness. So, that emotional kind of just steady. How hard is it to be steady?
It's extremely hard because, like I said, with Marv Dunphy, that was a great example. Someone who's steady regardless, eliminating some of those peaks and valleys. I think I was so hungry, and I knew that you needed to be steady to be successful. Anyone with the erratic behavior or the gimmicky behavior. I mean, we've seen all sorts of athletes on the beach that, and I won't name any names, but are more entertainers than they are athletes. That never was attractive for me. I wanted to play at the highest level I could and to train at the highest level. But I was hard to play with, I think, looking back, in terms of my standard was so high. And so if you were playing the sport for anything less than trying to be great and to compete with yourself to bring out your best, then I was gonna let you have it and try to push you to that level. But we could do a whole podcast on who has it and who does it. Can you learn it? And that's where it gets tricky.
Well, when I said earlier that you had this business approach, this executive approach to sport, it is also your demeanor. Like, you and I have crossed paths for 30 years. This is how you've always been. I mean, you actually are lighter now, I think, because you have a family. And I think life does that, right? We joke that you get tempered, right?
Yeah.
You just do.
Yeah, you do.
So this is maybe the lightest I've ever seen you, but you have always been, to the point.
Well, that's good, right?
It is. So I think a part of it is your demeanor, but what I'm trying to understand is, because for those of us who are trying to be steady, you have to put it somewhere, because you have feelings, you have reactions, you feel pressure, you do get disappointed, you are excited. What is a system that you have, for example, if you're playing and it's not going great, you're not finding the rhythm, you're not locked in yet, where do you go? What is a technique that you have within yourself? Is it a mantra? Is it sort of you direct yourself? Where did you always come up with being able to really avoid the peaks and valleys?
When I was turning pro, let's go say between 94, graduating from Pepperdine, and moving on to the AVP tour, I remember reading a lot of sports psychology books, trying to get an edge, trying to get some sort of, ahead of the game some way, and watching guys like Karch Cry, Ken Steffes, like I mentioned earlier. I realized that volleyball is very unique in the sense that you play for 15 seconds and then you have 20 seconds off. And so it was fascinating, because I forgot who it was who I heard this quote from, but they were talking about tennis. And I think tennis is very similar to beach volleyball. And they were saying the players that are most successful know how to manage that in-between time better than the next player. So it's not the when the ball's going across the net, it's when that little solitude that you have, you take the deep breath, you visualize what's next, you really prepare yourself for that next play. And because we all know outcomes at the end of the day, you can influence them to a certain extent, but you can control that next play to a certain extent, but you don't control the outcome. Like if we're going to play each other today and you're on fire and there's nothing I can do about it and I'm playing great, I can't control the outcome. So
that's a hard one, isn't it?
Yeah. But a lot of athletes never get to that.
Yeah.
That, I guess, evolved state where winning is going out and performing your best. And that competition with yourself. It's not always a competition with who's on the other side. It's usually the competition with yourself. And how do I prepare myself so I can get the most out of myself at this moment in time? And I think in my career, I haven't been the best beach volleyball player of all time or the best coach of all time, but I've managed to line up the dots at the right time in the big events that have then changed the trajectory of my career. And then people know that I can perform when the most is on the line.
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting. They talk about the space between our heartbeats. That beat in between, the non-beat, is actually as critical as the beat itself, to your point. Mm-hmm. And I think we don't give credit to preparation, and we don't give credit to letting go. Was it easy for you to say, my plan was to do this, I wasn't able to execute in that play, moving on? Were you quick and easy to move on, or was that something you worked on? Moving on from mistakes?
No, I think that was critical, having that detachment of, I did my best on that play. Now you got to flush that out and you got to focus on the next play. And it's almost cliche, right? Hey, focus on the next play, you hear it a lot.
Yeah,
but it's actually very real, and it's a practice that maybe is never perfected because all we have are thoughts in our mind, constantly thoughts, doubting. And we, now I work with a lot of athletes, and we meet once a week with a sports psychologist, and it's so important to have that ability to realize that focusing isn't sitting and meditating and not being distracted. You're constantly going to be distracted. The practice is, how do you refocus and constantly refocus? Okay, I'm going back to pass. All right, that person in the crowd just threw something on the court. Can I bring it back now? All right, it's hot out here. I'm sweating. I'm a little discomfort. All right, but now can I bring it back? And all these things are happening. So the ability to focus is almost the ability more to refocus, because you're just constantly going to be feeling these distractions, and it's how you can deal with them. And every one of them is different, but how you deal with that's focusing. Some people they're like, I can't focus, I have all these thoughts. That's normal. But how can you refocus off of those distractions that are constantly going around us? And that's almost in anything, in any field.
Yeah. Do you teach your athletes? Do you encourage them? For me, I would get back down to my feet. When I was playing beach, I would just go back down and look at my feet and reconnect with the sand. I just kind of wiggle my feet around and look and be like, that to me always represented I was getting ready for the next play. I would start there, because if I did this or looked around, it was never going to it wasn't happening. So I would just go back to point one and say, okay, and take one big exhale, almost like letting the bad play out, just whoo.
Yeah.
And having these little practices, everybody is different. It reminds me, I have a friend, Nancy, I'll say your name, I don't care, Nancy. And she always has feelings about everything. Like she'll sit and look at a menu and be like, oh, well, I want this, I don't know. I told them this, but do you think that was too mean? I'm like, you should just have a feeling, not a feeling about the feeling. And sometimes making mistakes is, yeah, I made a mistake. Not having that other chatter of, I made a mistake and I can't focus. It's almost like having the ability to observe it versus, pile on top of. Coaching women, because you know how men compartmentalize, I think, in an easier way. I just think we do. I think that you all do. I mean, for the most part, there's a biology, right? Like hunt, focus, okay, babies, million other things, threats. Like it's just there's some biology attached to it. Let's not play games. If you coached a group of women and you coach a group of men, typically there'd be some patterns. They'd be a little different. So you, as somebody who competed, at the highest level, Olympic gold, national championships. Is there any dance or something different that when you're having this conversation about the meaning maker, about your brain, about all these things, refocusing with, a different group of athletes, have you adjusted anything within yourself to communicate?
I think seeing all the different kind of theories and kind of not baggage, but the way that athletes arrive, seeing so many different approaches and so many different players coming from different coaches or different high school programs, and they get there. And I always say with like volleyball, we could go down the beach, right, and I could hit 100 balls, and every single play is different. And it's one of those sports where you have to improvise on certain things. So I don't think there's a wrong way and a right way. I know a way that has been successful for me and for a lot of players I've coached. But if someone comes in and they got a weird swing or whatever,
right,
let's meet in the middle. Let's have a conversation about it. And it's not wrong. Let's figure out what works for you. And if that kind of strange swing works for you and that's all you have, then you go down that path and you keep with that. But I think I've seeing more athletes, working with more athletes. I've become more open to accepting different theories and different ways to get to that end goal, whatever that is.
Mm-hmm. So you play professionally. You're very well respected. The Olympics are coming around. You end up playing with Eric, and let's just say, not me, because as an athlete, you sort of kind of see certain people a certain way, but let's say from the outside, you guys were perceived maybe as underdogs.
No question about it.
I don't always love that word, but...
But we were seeded 9th going into the Olympics, so even when the Olympics came around, I think you could confidently go back over the last 30 years, and we would for sure be the lowest seed to have ever won a gold medal.
Yeah, it would have been a good Vegas story, right?
Yeah.
So,
and now you can place bets, right?
On everything. I mean, what are sports for? So was that a familiar feeling to you? Was that like, what do you do with that? Is that sort of like, hey, that has nothing to do with me? What do you guys do with that, knowing that people sort of go, oh, well, that's cute. You guys, made it in, but it's going to be tough.
Well, I mean, let me tell you kind of the story, because it's fascinating how it became an Olympic sport. I thought in '96 I could probably get out there and play. I remember they had a trials in, I want to say it was in Baltimore. And I went out there and I got destroyed. I forgot who I played with.
I was going to say, that's also part of the formula. I mean, part of the equation is your partner.
Yeah. That's a big part. Yeah. But I remember Karch and Kent won, and Dodd and Whitmarsh got second place. So they were going to represent the AVP in that Atlanta. And so I was kind of kidding myself, thinking I could be ready in that time, because it takes time on the beach no matter how long you've played. It seems like it's a sport where you develop a little bit older.
Variables. There's just different variables.
Yeah. You don't see the 19-year-old coming out usually.
Yeah.
I mean, can it happen? Absolutely. So I set my sights on 2000. I said, hey, I got to win a tournament first before I go to the Olympics. And so in 97, I won the Hermosa Beach Grand Slam with Canyon Seaman at the time. And a month later, he dumped me to play with Mike Whitmarsh. And so that's how Eric and I got together.
Yeah. So for people who don't know, Whitmarsh is a very large guy.
Yeah. The late Mike Whitmarsh was a basketball player.
Yeah.
6'9", 6'10". Awesome guy. Really a lot of fun. And played with Dodd. So two real class acts. But Eric and I got kind of put together. I remember I had to switch sides. Usually play a right or a left side on the beach. And I wanted to play with Eric so bad that I was like, I'll play a side that I haven't played, but I adjusted to it pretty quickly. And we played for a while and realized we were getting like second all year. And
well, how big's Fonoy? 6'2"?
6'2", 6'3". So we're about the same.
Yeah.
And so we play this whole year. We don't win, and we split up. And then I remember I was planning on possibly going to the Olympics with Kent Steffes, because Kent and Karch had kind of broken up at the time. And so it's right before the 99 season. It's like a week before, I think it's Clearwater. Mm-hmm. And Kent disappears basically. And he...
You go like Stanford Business School or something?
I finally get a hold of him and he's like, I'm not going to play anymore. He's only 30 at the time.
Yeah,
right?
but didn't he go to like... He went to Stanford Business School. Yeah.
I think he graduated like number 2 in his class. Yeah. Just a really smart guy. And so I'm like, what am I going to do? At the same time, like Whitmarsh hurts his back or something. And so Eric is without a partner. I'm without a partner. So it's almost like destiny, right? Mm-hmm. So we get together, enter on like a Tuesday, make it to the finals of Clearwater, beat Karch and Adam Johnson 15-7 in the final to win our first tournament. And so it's like, this almost shouldn't have ever happened.
Yeah.
And then from there, we went on this crazy world tour trying to qualify for the Olympics.
So for people listening, you have to travel around to come out as the top 2 from each country. And just to give you a sense of it, the U.S., Brazil, these are some of the most competitive countries in the sport. So if you could literally be 7th in the world, but 3rd from the U.S. and you weren't going to go to the Olympics.
Yeah.
So people just have to understand you're also trying to compete out of one of the most talented countries in this sport at that time. So you were dealing with that. So I want to ask though, when you're getting second and then say, hey, maybe we need to make a change so that one of us can win, right? And you end up back together. Was there a change in mindset, or you'd given up with, expectation? What do you think also, besides right time, you played right, all these things, was different about the two of you that allowed you to actually win? Because you're talking about Karch, which I don't care if Karch has one leg at the time. Mm-hmm. He's a hard guy to beat.
Yeah. I think when we got back together, we realized the urgency of getting closer to 2000, the Olympics, which we both had childhood dreams of being Olympians. And when it clicked in Clearwater, we realized we had something. It was just extracting it. Up until that point, you didn't have the proof of concept. It was like, yeah, we're good, but we're not at that great level yet. And I think the urgency, along with the fact of the matter of you have to qualify together, and now you're together.
Your points have to be together.
Yeah, we're going on this journey together regardless. There can be no noise. There's no partners. There's no one calling you asking to play every week. It's like, you have to qualify together. And that's the brutal thing about the Olympics, because if something happens to your partner in that qualification run, you're out. You can't just get another player. And at the time, it was your best 8 finishes. Now I think it's your best 12 finishes. But until you've won 8 tournaments, you can be improving. And so this battle went on for almost, a year and a half, this qualification. And the team that we were battling was Karch Cry and Adam Johnson for that second spot. The first spot was already taken by a team that had committed full time to the international circuit.
Right, so they were just accruing points.
Yeah, and whereas myself and Fonoimoana, Karch and Adam were trying to support the AVP tour and try to qualify. So we were basically fighting for this one spot. So it comes down to Belgium. Belgium in 2000, it was probably 45, 60 days prior to the Olympics, the last qualification tournament. We're behind by, I don't know, it's arbitrary, whatever the points were. But we needed a 4th place or better. And if Karch got 4th, then we needed a 3rd. If he got 3rd, we needed a 2nd. I remember I think we went to like a movie during the qualification day, and Karch was in the qualifier. And we came out of the movie and we were walking back to the hotel, and people were like, "Oh, did you hear what happened?" And we're like, "No." And they said, Karch threw his shoulder out. And so we were like, "Oh, that sucks, but, okay, you're next." You feel for him, and then the next thing you think, like, all right, so what does that mean for us? We still needed to get 4th or better to take over that spot, right? So nothing really changed for us other than they weren't going to be in that tournament to push it higher. So I got to the fifth place position. We were at the 5th place, and we end up, this may be a little too intricate of a story, but you as a beach volleyball player, and beach volleyball players that are listening, they know, but we were playing St. John Smith and Carl Henkel. St. John and Karch have history that goes back a really long time. So we're thinking maybe St. John might not play as hard,
let you guys, he'll jam Karch through you.
Okay, so you get it perfectly. Yeah. So we're feeling good about that.
But it's St. John.
But no. His partner, Carl.
Yeah.
So we do a coin flip. We lose the... we win the coin flip. We go on the good side. It's pretty windy. Carl serves like 5 aces from the bad side.
Okay, so for people listening, the deal is with beach volleyball, and these are these variables, and that's why usually you do need to be a little more experienced. Mm-hmm. When you start on the good side, it's like serving in tennis. You don't want to be broken. That is the time you must get your 5 points. So for him to start out and be serving from the bad side and getting 5 points is not good for Dain and his partner.
Yeah, it's like being broken in
tennis. Like being broken
3 times in a row.
Yes.
And you are reeling.
Yeah.
And we figure out what's going on. So this is what we figured out. So if Karch has hurt himself, but still retains the spot with Adam, the first alternate would be Carl.
No.
So Carl's playing his heart out, because if he blocks us from knocking Karch
he plays with Adam.
He plays with Adam. And he's playing.
And you're learning this in real time, kind of?
Yeah, because you didn't know what you were going to face.
Did somebody on a water break go, "Hey, by the way, just so we're clear, Carl gets to go in if you guys don't pull it"?
Well, no, that was kind of out there.
Okay.
But then the St. John thing was, you were kind of like, maybe that trumps it. He lets us kind of slide by. And he's playing out of his mind. Carl Henkel's a fantastic player.
Yeah.
He played in the Olympics with St. John in '96. And so, anyways, I think we're down 8-2 at one point. Then we get all 5 on the good side. We close the gap to 8-7. We end up winning 15-12. But that win put us into the Olympics. And so these kind of storylines that are happening, kind of real time, are fascinating. And
when you're in that in real time, and you've worked not only for the 16 months of qualification period, traveling all around the world, kind of all these different variables and components to get you there, but it's a lifetime, right? It's being a kid and practicing and going to sweaty gyms and going to beaches and traveling and not making a ton of money as a professional beach volleyball player, doing it for love and passion, and dedicating yourself to developing your craft. you're here. It is not starting out in the this wasn't the plan. Okay.
Right. No one plans for it to come down to the last.
But when it's 8-2,
yeah.
when it's 8-2,
Yeah.
and it should be 5-5,
yeah.
let's say in a perfect world, where do you go? What do you tell yourself as an athlete or just as somebody who really wants something? Because we always say, oh, don't put outcome. Just do your best, be in the moment, work hard, do all that. Where do you go? What's your internal dialogue at that moment where it's like, hey, man, this might be a bust?
Yeah. Yeah, you're thinking not only...
You're like, oh, shit, yeah. Carl Hinkle, who knew?
Yeah.
No, but I mean...
he's playing great, but you're thinking, gosh, all these trips, all these continents. I mean, there was years we would do Asia, we'd do Australia, we'd do Africa, we'd do all of Western Europe, we'd do South America, we'd do Canada. Just for, to get to this dream of making it and representing your country in the Olympics, and to think of you had all this opportunity to create this, like a gap if you were going to ever do it, but you couldn't do it. And now this is it. This is like, this is it. And so at that time, those thoughts that I just said are coming in and out of your head. You're like, but you're trying to keep them quiet. And that's where that refocus is like, all right, you're thinking, all right, I put all this time in, I'm not even gonna make the Olympics. It was all a bust. But then you got like, all right,
serve, receive, let's go.
Serve, receive, and the athlete that can pull back, like we talked about earlier, and quiet that voice and quiet that noise, and succeed is the one that usually prevails.
Yeah. Do you get meaner? Like, so I guess what I'm saying is sometimes you almost use a little bit of aggression to push those thoughts out, in that sense of, okay, next ball, I'm getting this ball. Yeah. Where did you find it? Where did you get it from?
Yeah, I don't think it's a pushing out, because then it's have stress. This conflict. It's more acceptance of that's true, and I still need to side out. Like whether you like that reality or not, that it's now down to this, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Accept it. Don't be like, I have to block it out. Because if you're like, I have to block it out, all that does is create more and more and more.
On top
it's like almost, I acknowledge that thought. I don't like it too much. And now what can I do? Because I don't want to fight that spot. If I get in a back and forth with that thought, you're beating yourself up. And you're like, you idiot. How did we get here? How do we get here?
Is there a mantra? Is it, okay, I pass the ball? Like first principle, what's the most important thing in volleyball? Pass the ball. Mm-hmm. Nothing else happens unless you pass the ball. Or you just make everything a lot easier. Let's just say that. So do you go lock into, I go back to the fundamentals? Is there an internal mantra? Is there something you and Eric did as a team that also brought the team back into this refocus?
Yeah, I think kind of like, how you said you look down at your feet and you kind of reset yourself. You have to have that tool that you can rely on. Like, all that's great, all this noise is happening, all this crazy situation, but here it comes side out. I slap my hands together, or think of just passing. Think of that one thing on the net. What's my next action? And can I do that to set up that next play? And there's this constant dialogue, I think, that every athlete has, especially in a sport that has these stop downs, like beach volleyball or tennis have. And it's that ability again, and I don't know how you get that ability other than practicing it. Like whether you're at the beach and there's no crowd, can you execute that practice? Gabby, are you looking at your feet in practice? You probably are, because there's no way you're doing it in the real time of a huge competition,
right? If you haven't practiced it.
And so that control, even though it's almost like it's control, but it's not, because
Yeah, you said it, the acceptance of it.
yeah,
But you've practiced these other things around it. So you have a tool with the acceptance. But also, I think gaining experience is wonderful for this, but gaining those skills allows for the acceptance of it to be easier, because you're not just fear-based.
right.
You have a strategy. So I have to ask you, as somebody who coaches athletes, where you're not on the court, you don't get to pass, you can't serve it for them, you don't know how to set, you can't set up the block. Where do you go as a coach? What's the most impactful way for you to support them from the side, because you don't get to touch the ball?
Well, I sometimes I'll tell them, just pass. That will be your trigger for everything else. Don't think about, you hit that last ball out, or you didn't kick out on this side or that side, or just try to pass that ball, absorb it, pass it in that general area, and that is going to trigger everything else if you have prepared, from practice and all that. Because there's no reason to think of, okay, I have to do this and I have to do that and I have to do that. That's instinctual.
Yeah.
You need something that is going to ground you and be, all right, I fleshed out the last play and boom, I'm here and I'm ready for this next play. And like I said, managing that focus and refocus and practicing it, I think is most crucial, because so many people get to that big game, and I think it's funny because the Olympics are in a week, and you always see so many top seeds succumb to the pressure because they are not possibly equipped with those tools to reset, or the magnitude is the voice gets too loud. The oh my gosh, I'm here, I'm supposed to win, I'm the number one seed. I do think when we went to the Olympics, and to continue on that story, I remember getting back and everybody was like, oh, it's so great, but there was this whisper of yeah, but Cart should go. He's got 3 gold medals, 2 indoor and
one on the beach.
And you hear the noise, and it started to, that noise of us not succeeding that well, not being great in that qualification, but we made it. We kind of made it limping in and just barely. But hearing the noise, for me, that's always been a huge motivator. It puts a little chip on your shoulder when people doubt you. Oh, you can't do that. So I remember vividly, it happened multiple times where people were like, oh, that's so cool, you're going to the Olympics and it's going to be so cool, have a great time, and take a lot of pictures, and
have a great time.
It was kind of but it was kind of the slap on the butt, go enjoy yourself, but don't get your hopes up, but just go down there. That's so cool, you're representing the United States and you're doing this, but almost but don't expect too much. Don't expect too much.
Were you and Eric working with a coach?
We worked with Greg Vernovich, who was he was just getting into coaching, and he was a teammate of mine at Pepperdine, and he was fantastic because he was so far ahead of the game. I mean, remember back then when you got a tape of someone, it was VHS, and you would have to sit there with the one VCR here, the other VCR here, and one of the things we did, which now is you can do in 2 seconds, right, is he would make 3 to 5 minute videos of every team that we were going to play, and they were cut to watch just them siding out. So I could see you side out in 30 times. If the
ball's passed here, these are your tendencies and such.
Oh, look at that. The guy looks at the ball at the last second and he does this, or he doesn't look at the ball at all.
And then he does hitting that. Yeah, of course.
And tendencies that the players wouldn't even know. So he was fantastic, not only getting us prepared, but he was also a go-between. One of the biggest things when you get to the Olympics is shielding yourself from the distractions. And sometimes those distractions come from those who you think it wouldn't come from, like a family member or a cousin or someone. There's always someone that's like, it's 9:00 at night and they're like, I need tickets to beach volleyball tomorrow.
Oh yeah.
And
so he shielded you guys from all that?
Yeah, we said, everything goes to him. And
that's smart.
And we wanted to absorb everything. We went to the opening ceremonies. A lot of athletes will be like, well, I'm playing the next day, so I'm not going to opening ceremony. That's very real. I get it. But for us, we were like, this is the Olympics.
I mean, how long is the opening ceremony? 4 hours? How long is it?
It can be long, yeah.
Yeah, right?
And they have you kind of in a holding area in the gym, and then they usually walk you out. Everyone's a little bit different, but we wanted to get the full experience.
Yeah.
Even though it could hamper. But if you're thinking like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be on my feet in the opening ceremonies, you probably shouldn't go.
Right.
If you're going to go there and have fun and like, this is crazy once in a lifetime, then that's how we kind of looked at the Olympics. And then I remember we just really said to each other, let's go as hard as we can each play, and let's just play the best volleyball that we're capable of. That's our goal, to try to play the best volleyball that we're capable of. That took away like who's on the other side. That kind of took away this is a 10,000 seat arena in Bondi Beach and it's amazing. Not completely away, right? It's there.
Sure.
It's always trying to creep in, but let's reset. I wish I could have played at that level consistently always throughout my career. I think I would have had, 50 more wins or won all the games that you quote should have won.
Yeah, those
right?
are my favorite.
Yeah.
Woulda, coulda, shoulda.
Yeah. But we were so locked in. I remember we were so locked in.
Could you sleep?
Tournament. I could, but it was almost like Christmas, you
Yeah.
couldn't wait to get up.
Yeah.
And we had about a 45-minute bus ride from the village to the beach. And I remember vividly going on that bus ride once to the championship, and I thought to myself, I was like, I've already achieved a silver. It's like, so why don't I go down there today and do something more, right? Like do something, like I've already earned the silver. I can go and just stand on the court. I'm getting silver. I've already got it. But how many chances will I ever have to be in this position to win a gold medal? And I put that urgency on myself. Like, I may never be in this position again. So you go for it and leave it all behind. You hear that. That's another kind of cliche statement. Leave it all on the court. Leave it all on the court. But if you're an athlete, and only when you go home and look in the mirror that night, the coach can ask you all day and you're going to be like, yeah, coach, I put it all on the line. But could I have gone for that one ball? Could I have done this? Could I have? And I think you're always going to have the little doubts, but I can say, without a doubt, during that Olympic run, it was max effort on every play. And I've seen the tapes, and you're max effort on every. That's the challenge, and we were able to overcome it. And so that competition with self, which yourself is always kind of, let's kind of be a little laid back. You gotta be.
Or you're pacing yourself or holding energy for the duration of the match or what have you. So I have a question. If you've been favored, right? When you play in the MVP, you were top team. In college, top team. Did you feel different pressure because the expectation was like, hey, of course you're there, you're great, but the expectation wasn't for you to win? Was there something about that was actually better for you think?
I think that we were underdogs was better for us rather than being
the team to beat.
The team to beat. I think that took pressure off. Anytime someone doubts you or kind of looks at you as You're just there, but it's not going to happen. That not only are you not in the spotlight, but it also gives you that incentive to push forward. And I was so about beach volleyball. Like, I would look at the back of Volleyball magazine when I was a kid and see how much the guys were making at the time, and realize, hey, you can make a good career, you know, with prize money and endorsements at the time, because you know how the 90s were. It's just like, it was exploding. But the guys like Tim Hovland and Mike Dodd and St. John and Randy, who I spent the night at tournaments in Laguna Beach to see them, like, that was before there was a grandstand. So people would come the night before, bring couches, bury kegs in the sand, and it was a big party. And I had 2 older brothers, so I could tag along when I was, 10 years old. So imagine going from that 10-year-old watching them on the court to competing against Karch Karai.
It must be a mind trip a little bit in the beginning.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. It's just like some of these people now are playing
tennis,
against
Djokovic.
Playing Tiger Woods, and they were 2 at the time.
Yeah.
But
going in as an underdog was...
But what I was going to say, with all these athletes, like, I understood the importance. Do you know what I mean? Like, Karch and Kent, they knew how important it was to win the first Olympics.
Yeah.
Like, there was way more on the line than them winning the Olympics. So, like, they got it. Like, the hierarchy, the fight of where did this sport originate? There was a lot on the line. And so I think Eric and I were from that school where we got the history. Like, you go out to some players right now, they can't name 5 players.
Yeah.
You know, from back in the day, or that put the sport to where it was. So we went into that Olympics with more, we felt the responsibility.
Yeah.
Like, where no one else put that responsibility on us but us, that Karch and Kent won in 96. This is 2000. We're the representatives. We're the shot to do it. We're going to go do our job. And the crazy thing is now is, like, Karch and Kent in 96, myself and Fonoimoana in 2000, Misty and Carrie, 04, 08, 12,
April.
Phil and Todd, 08.
Yeah. April
in 2000 or 2020.
Yeah.
And it's just, it means something, you know, from the fabric of the sport. And so I think we had that weighing heavily on us internally, that we had this responsibility to perform, and that's what got us to perform at that level.
Yeah. And people don't realize how athletic, you know, it's like the Brazilian teams are, like, you're talking about phenomenal athletes too. Yeah. It's not like people who are just picking up the sport. Yeah. Is it safe to say the sport was pretty much born at State Beach? Are we saying it's State Beach, or is it more Serena? Like, are we getting technical?
Yeah, I think, like, there's a fight, like the Hawaii thing with...
what do you mean, like?
From the sport originating.
Oh.
You know, I think Hawaii kind of claims some of it.
I see.
And Southern California. And so I don't know what the correct answer is. We
used to have... I'll tell you a really quick story, because then I want to talk about your 4 national championships at USC. So let's say this: you have a beyond successful career as a professional, and then because you are articulate, your understanding of the game, your love and passion of the game, you've also been broadcasting. How many years now?
Gosh, probably since 08 or 2010, around that. So almost 15 years.
And when did you retire from competing?
Around 08 to, you know, I might have played one tournament in 2010, but around 2008. So I played from about 94 to 08.
And it's funny, in talking to you, it's like I can see how much you love volleyball, but you also feel like a lot more than just a volleyball player. Mm-hmm. Like somebody who can sort of say, oh, what other things interest me that I'd like to look at? So was that transition, how was that transition for you going from competing to not competing, even though you had something else to fall back on?
When you say fall back on the...
Well, I mean, you are a unique person. You've won a lot, and you could do many other things. And the fact that broadcasting was pretty obvious, I thought, because you're, like I said, a great communicator. You understand the game. But it wasn't like you weren't going to, you have nothing else to do. Mm-hmm. Let's say that. Mm-hmm. But how was that going from that high level execution, those fine moments.
Yeah.
And then going, okay, I did it. Were you okay with it? Because you had done it? Or was it hard?
I think walking away from the sport and realizing that the window is closing, you realize the window's closing in beach volleyball when your phone calls don't get returned from like partners.
Yeah.
And you realize, okay, go ahead.
No. That's just always been a funny part to me about volleyball, beach volleyball in particular. Like they broke up, they're together. This guy went behind or this girl went behind and got the other partner before they broke up with the partner. Most sports don't have that.
No, it's
I don't know what they do in doubles tennis, but it's the only sport where that's kind of wonky.
It is. Yeah. It is. It's like it almost mimics a real relationship.
It's brutal.
It's crazy, and then the two players that have broken up always end up playing each other, and that's always
of course
really, really fun. I think as I saw the window closing, I said, what can I do next? I saw some of the commentating opportunities, and I remember I started doing international volleyball first at a studio out in Glendale that wasn't even equipped to really do broadcasting. I had a big boom mic and I was by myself and I would talk for 7 hours, and that's kind of how I learned. And then I got to a point where I didn't think I could go much further, and I started looking into getting an agent kind of and figuring it out. But I got a break. My first break in broadcasting was with Fox Sports West. I started doing high school football on Friday Night Lights.
How'd you get that gig?
This guy named Tom Fuhr. I don't know if you know Tom. Mm-hmm. He used to work with Nike, and he was an executive producer. Really great guy. And he put together this football package. It was crazy because Chris McGee was the play-by-play. I was doing sideline. And I did okay, but it was a great platform to fail in. Or not be great.
It won't ruin you.
Yeah,
I got you.
Because even now, to this day, I tell upcoming broadcasters, don't take an A gig if you're doing C work. Because you may only get one shot at it. And so I was learning. Then they put me on some pre and post Dodgers and Angels games, and then I did some college football. And then I did I got a call one day, and they said, the sideline reporter for the Clippers is sick. Can you do a Clipper game? And I was like, I'd never done an NBA game. And I was like sweating. And I remember at the time, I think I went home. I think I even picked up a newspaper.
Let me download all who the players are.
Just figure out. By 4:00, I'm at Staples interviewing. Mike Dunleavy at the time was the coach. And I remember I was in the back room getting ready to do the open, when they let's go down to the sideline. And I remember I was in this back room, and the girl who was going to sing the anthem was practicing on the top of her lungs. And I didn't know the story, and I was freaking out. And I went out there, and they threw it down to me, and I did it, whatever it was. The story, I think it was on Sam Cassell.
Oh, yeah.
Getting traded, and they were playing in Boston. I think had won that year. This is 2008. And I don't know what I said, but I guess it was good enough because they gave me a few more opportunities. And I got with an agent. His name is Lon Rosen, who's Magic Johnson's old agent. And I knew him through a friend at the gym. And he took me on, and he ended up being friends with Tom. And then he started negotiating for me to do the sideline stuff. And by the end of the day, one day he called me. He's like, we got five games next year. He'll call me back 2 hours later. We got 15 games. Then he called me 2 hours later. He's like, we're doing all the home games. And I'm like, that's the greatest thing ever. The next year, Fox took over all 82 games. And so I was on the team plane, traveling, and like, you know, my broadcast career was moving. And it was so fun to do the sideline reporting with the NBA, but the NBA is brutal in terms of travel.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God. It's great travel.
Yeah.
And they travel so efficiently and chartered.
It's still travel.
Yeah, you go to sleep and or you play a game in Atlanta, you're on the plane, you wake up in New York, come back to hotels, you don't know what room you're in because you forgot.
Yeah, was the bathroom on the left or the right side?
It was wild, but the AVP, I've done the broadcasting for, like 12 some years. But I think the story about doing sidelines, so many people were so surprised that they couldn't believe like an Olympic gold medalist was going to go and do sideline for high school.
This is what I was going to say, is you're an expert, best in class, start over.
Yeah.
I think that's the key to universal success, is you're never afraid to be at the beginning. Even when your pride a little bit gets banged up or whatever, I'm sure you're on the sideline of a football game and some hotshot kid who thinks he's a cat's meow who won't even play D3 ball thinks, is like, hey, buddy, get out of my way. And you're just like, oh, you have no idea, right? So what is that, the belief in yourself that because belief in yourself is like, I'll understand this, I'll go to the next, I'll understand that, I'll move through to the next. Mm-hmm. What was it in you that you're like, all right, I'll humble down for this?
Yeah, I saw it more as an opportunity. I think that if you think things are owed to you or you think you've earned stuff and everyone's going to just roll out the carpet, you're just like sorely mistaken. And I just thought, if you want to go down this path, you got to pay your dues and you got to start somewhere, instead of thinking, I didn't really, those thoughts never were in my head, although some people would bring them to your attention, like, hey, you're an Olympic gold medalist, how are you? And you didn't even, the best part was the basketball, you didn't even play basketball. Always people thinking the prerequisite is you need to be the superstar player to cover a sport.
Yeah.
Little did they know is the majority of play-by-play commentators never played.
Yeah.
But the analyst is always usually a player, but the sideline reporter.
Yeah, you're telling stories.
You're telling stories, and I just always looked at it more as here's an opportunity. Let me do the best I can in this opportunity, and then move on to the next opportunity, and then. So in 2016, NBC had me be a part of the Olympic team, and that was incredible. I did some analyst work. I did some play-by-play stuff. I did some sideline. I was invited back to do Tokyo, which was really cool, but no crowd. And then now I'm going to
heading
Paris.
Out. Yeah, you got a couple of days and you're heading out.
And so
I want to rewind. When did you meet your wife?
2001, 2002. She moved from the East Coast, and she was is a yoga teacher at the Sports Club LA, which I'm sure you've been to before, which is now an Equinox. And yeah, we were friends probably almost 10 years before we got into a relationship, and I think those are usually the best relationships, when you can be friends first. And it's just been awesome. She's such great support and always has supported everything. I remember trying to get the head coaching job at SC, how instrumental she was, and just helping.
Encouraging.
And guiding. And then
the reason I bring her up is because, so let's say you're a couple by 2010 or 11 and you're broadcasting, and are you feeling satisfied in the broadcasting? Is it bringing you a satisfaction? Because again, you can keep improving. You are in a world that's all dynamic. It's athletics. Does that feel, is it enriching you in the ways that you want?
It was interesting because I was on the tail end. I came in with the Clippers, Blake Griffin's rookie year, and right before Doc Rivers took over as head coach, I had left. So that was about 5 years. It was 2007, 8 to like 2013. And that's right when our relationship started. So I was doing a lot of public speaking, a lot of going to schools and doing speaking, also dabbling in the coaching thing.
Well, this is what I'm so fascinated on. And so 2015, you volunteer to be a coach at USC. Gold medalist.
It's another reset.
Yeah, but volunteer. Like you're in a relationship, you're grown up in the way that you have grown up responsibilities. Right? You have this other craft that you've been developing and doing. Where did you get this idea?
The coaching?
Yeah, to volunteer.
Well,
how do you have time?
I was starting like a beach club with a friend of mine, and I didn't know exactly where that would go. And then I got a phone call from Anna Collier. Do you remember Anna Collier?
Do I remember her?
Yeah. So
I was one of her first practice dummies.
Okay.
For Holly and Cammie
Sorelli?
Yes.
Yeah.
They were like, go over there and take line. Okay, now take this.
Classic.
Oh, yeah.
Classic. So Anna was the head coach at USC, and so much credit has to be given to her for really getting the beach movement going for the NCAA and the collegiate level. And I think Misty May was volunteer assistant. She got pregnant, and I think she was going to walk away. And I remember vividly when I got the call, I was working a game in Stanford, broadcasting for the Pac-12 network or something. And she called and she said, I wanted to see if you wanted to be a volunteer assistant position. Misty just left. Why don't you come see the team? So I thought about it. I was like, well, this could be cool. But, you're kind of wary of this movement hasn't really started, right? It's 2015. It doesn't start till 2016, but there's still a league and the teams are growing. So as soon as I got back to Los Angeles, I went to a practice, and the team was so professional. They ran over, they all got in a line, they shook my hand. They're led by Sarah Hughes, Kelly Chang, and all these.
Yeah, two women that are going to the Olympics next week.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I said, these girls are serious. And so I agreed to do it. And then that year in 2015, we go undefeated, 28-0. The next year, which was the first.
What did you learn there? Well, was there something that you have so much experience in volleyball? Was there something in that season, even as an assistant, that you showed up to you different?
For me?
Yeah, you were like, oh, I'm looking at this differently.
Yeah, I mean, now I always say, like, number one, be the player on the court. That's the most fun. Number two would be coaching. And number three would be broadcasting and talking about what's going on. So coaching I was still so active at the time. I'd jump on the court, I'd play a lot with the girls, and I was just slowly transitioning from this player to this coach. But being a player's kind of coach is, I think, so beneficial because you've been there. And so I tried to give them all the tools that I knew that were making me successful when I played, and they were like sponges. Like Sarah Hughes was just like, Misty May kind of mentors her, and she just is very driven. And everyone kind of fell in line. That's, again, remember we talked about culture. That leadership at those captains being kind of an extension of the coaching, and they were focused on winning that first national championship. Like, that was going to be history. Almost like we talked about the gold, 96 Olympics, Karch and Kent. They were going to be the first. Yeah. Like, they had decided that. So one in 2016, then one in 2017. Then I stayed for 2018. And what
about the time commitment? And
that was hard. But
and did you think, oh, I'm investing in myself? Was there any of that thought to your mind about what you were doing?
Yeah, there was, like, hey, if I ever got a head coaching job, I'd love for it to be in LA because that's where I'm at, and love for it to be a really strong program. But I used that time to get better, to learn the coaching ranks, and I continued to be a volunteer despite being offered the lead assistant job because I could still broadcast. And at the time I had a contract with ESPN to cover 25 minimum women's indoor events. And so being the volunteer, I had that leeway to say, like, I got to go. And then I walked away after the 2018 season. And then in the summer of 2019, on a step down. Yeah. And you can imagine everybody and their
was clamoring.
Yeah, because Southern California, beach volleyball, and to be able to coach at a school like that. And it was, the stars aligned, and fortunately it worked out. And it took a long process.
What is that? What do you mean it took a long process in the interviewing process?
I think when you're a school like USC, right? When you go to hire a head coach, what's usually one prerequisite of that coach? Do you know?
I don't.
Is that they're a head coach.
Oh, got it.
Already.
I love that. That's always my favorite, that chicken and egg. We'd love to get you, but you have no experience.
There it is.
But you can't get experience. It's like, help me out.
So I think they went through a multitude of coaches that it maybe didn't, wasn't a fit for them. And fortunately for me,
none of them were gold medal winners, baby.
So the resume was strong, but it didn't check. It didn't check the one
but you'd
box.
been there too.
But it didn't. But someone had to talk to them, like, hey, you got to go out on a limb, even though you're not really going out on a limb. But if you want that box checked, it's not checked yet, so you're gonna have to take that risk. And so it was funny. I remember I put my resume in, did the whole thing, and I was broadcasting in Hamburg, Germany for the World Championships. And of course they called me on like Monday, and the tournament goes to the following Sunday. And at the time, Lynn Swan, NFL player for the Pittsburgh Steelers, you remember Lynn Swan? He was the AD, and he was going on vacation. So they said, you got to, when you get back, we'll do it. He's going to leave the next day from, I think I was landing like Sunday night. It was either Sunday or Monday. And I remember I flew from Germany to LAX and got in an Uber and went straight to USC to do like
Kiss the
sit
ring.
down interview. Like I remember having my roller bag, and it was crazy. And when you do a flight like that, you're kind of loopy when you get to wherever
you're delirious.
And so I just kind of did the best I could. And anyway, long story short, they ended up probably 30 days later, they made a decision, and I was the decision. And it's so funny, like now that we have had created almost this
4 national championships, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I can say it for you.
4 national championships.
Yeah.
And every year I usually get a text from Lynn Swan saying,
I knew.
He's like, I guess we made the right call.
Yeah.
Just, and so many thanks and gratitude that they did go out on that limb, even though from my seat it didn't seem like going out on a limb, but from their seat. And you know how it is when you get to certain positions, sometimes the people hiring you might not know that much about the sport. You know what I mean? Like the intricacies of it. And that's what we've finally got conveyed, and he understood. And
how have you learned to manage the business, bureaucracy, university system with coaching and managing, because the head coach has to do that? How do you have a different character that you put on to bridge that? Like how, because that people don't realize the art of that as well.
So I'm sure you've heard this quote before where people say, if you want to coach, don't be a head coach, because there's so much that goes with it. Nowadays for me, I'm doing a lot of what like a GM would be doing with the finances, and things are changing right now at the NCAA level, and it's only going to get a little more complex. But with the name, image, and likeness side of things, it's fascinating, but it is like running a small company with the players, with your staff, with juggling the athletic department, the university. It's a corporation.
The boosters.
Yeah. There's there's a lot of different components, and I've learned a ton, always just trying to listen and find my way. And it's been a blast. Like, I'm on this is the third AD that's there. The AD's name's Jen Cohen. She came down from the University of Washington, and she's been awesome. So much great support. President Folt, who's the president of the entire university, a very big supporter as well. And so,
well, winning also,
winning helps.
Let's not kid ourselves. I mean, you guys are kicking ass, and so, and now you have all these players coming out of your program that are also kicking ass on the bigger stage. So, you're not only coaching athletes, but I know from being impacted by a coach, because I don't know if this is true or not, but for me as a woman, as a young woman going into college and having a really great coach who is still my dear friend that I respect and admire, that actually changed the trajectory of my life and who I became as a person. And so not only are you making great athletes, but you're mentoring people and you're creating a coaching staff that's doing that. So I have to ask, if you as the player, you said number one, most fun obviously is doing it, playing. But are you surprised at the satisfaction that you're experiencing, impacting in however large or small of a way these people that happen to be athletes? Like what's that been for you?
Well, it's awesome. Like the two big goals, right, are for the student athlete. You want them to have an awesome experience. You want them to get a degree. If you can get a ring for them, a championship ring, that's even better. But I think the most joy that I get is seeing athletes fulfill whatever it is. Maybe it's just being a great college player and then going on to get a job and work in business or whatnot, or those players that go on to want to play more. And it's crazy. Sarah Hughes in the Olympics, Kelly Chang, the team that we spoke of earlier, Sophie Bukovic, who was on that squad in 2015, 16, and 17. She's from Canada. She's in the Olympics. And then Tina Gradina is a Latvian who was a 4-time All-American.
Can you say that name again, please?
Tina Gradina.
Yeah, that's amazing. Sorry.
So, and the great thing is, with the majority of those athletes, I have great relationships, and you want to be that support and you want them to feel part of that family. And so I put a lot of effort in trying to keep the alumni engaged and together and bring them by practices so the current players can see, and then it becomes so much more real for them. But I think the biggest joy is watching the player succeed and knowing that you might have had a really small part of that, but it's just a lot of fun, and we're having a blast. My assistant coach, who is now an associate head coach, is Gustavo Hoja. He's a Brazilian coach who is just clicks with the players. Players love him, and he's so knowledgeable. And like without him, it would, I don't think we'd be where we're at. And so the coaching staff that has been there with me and the support from the school, it's just a really great formula.
How would you have coached yourself? Like now you're a coach. If you had an athlete like yourself, what technique would you have used?
Well, I think the way that we talked about earlier in this conversation of Marv Dunphy, I never really responded to the yelling coach or the drill sergeant coach, although I've had them, but I think like the story I told you where he stopped down practice without an explanation, but knew exactly what he was doing. I think that triggered me more than, and when I say triggered, knowing that like there's so much more going on than what's on the surface as a coach. And you don't always want the athlete to know everything or spell it out for them. Sometimes it's nice when it's you figure it out.
They discover it.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you a really quick story. Gary Sato was one of my coaches on the beach, and he was an assistant coach to Marv, right? Mm-hmm. And he tells this great story. They're indoor. I think they're, in a tournament, like a world tournament. I don't know if it's Olympic or not, but let's say it's pretty serious. Mm-hmm. And it's at the end of the game, and who do you think's going to get the ball? Karch. Mm-hmm. And they all get in the huddle. They say, get the ball to Karch. Everybody's in the huddle. They lean in. And boom, boom, pass set, boom, quick, give the ball to Karch, game over as planned, right?
Yeah.
So Gary said he put that in his pocket, and he thought, one day when I'm coaching a head coach, I'm going to use that. And he said he was in a scenario, it was a group of female players, and he said, okay, we're going to give the ball to whoever. Yeah. And all the girls leaned out. And the girl that he said it about went like this. He goes, because it was different, right? Like coaching, the complexity of coaching female athletes and male athletes, and there's different emotions and different things. Mm-hmm. I'm just curious how you developed your skills in that way, because it isn't the same. Mm-hmm. Some girls, it's like, hey, you can do it. Some girls, it's like, it's going to, you can't, Yeah. It's just all the nuance. How have you developed? Is it intuitive? Like, hey, with her, I need to just put my hand on her back. With her, I need to leave her alone and give her one idea. Mm-hmm. Where do you get the instincts and bringing the best out in each person? Because I think that is the art of coaching.
Yeah, I think over the years, what I'm starting to learn and what I've started to implement is, learning the player as a person more, mm-hmm. because then it is intuitive. Because you can't have a blanket, like, here's the policy, here's how I interact with everybody, because it works for some people, it doesn't work mm-hmm. for others. So using that intuitive approach of trying to speak to the way that they listen is huge. And there's emotions involved, there's ego involved, there's all sorts of things at a varying level per athlete. Yeah. And I think that's the magic, is the more you know the player, because it's easy to get locked into it's volleyball, we're going to do the volleyball. But the trick is almost take the volleyball, not out of it, but put an emphasis on relationship building and caring about the individual off the court. Then when you tell them to do something, the trust has been built and the understanding, and then it's way more effective at that learning, teaching level than it would be without the relationship.
You have a son and a wife, and I'm fascinated. A couple of things. One is you have all these personalities that you care about, and it's part of your job. And then how do you have a way to sort of, because it becomes a family, your team mm-hmm. becomes a family. How do you have enough energy, emotional bandwidth when you get home, right? Yeah. To be available there too. Where do you have a technique? And I would imagine you're a better partner because of your coaching. I'd imagine that there's some things that you've learned that make you a better partner. But how do you because it's a lot of energy.
Yeah, it really is. And especially when, right now, preparing for the Olympics, coaching and recruiting, and the days can be long, and then you have to shift gears. I think learning to shift gears, because Maeve and Cade have been amazing. Cade's 6 now, mm-hmm. and he'll start first grade in the fall, or in a month. But they're excited for you to get home, so that's inspirational. And that almost, at times, if you don't feel like you have the reserves, you get that jolt of energy by seeing them, by understanding this is the real stuff. And there's the work stuff, but there's almost those different buckets, and that whole balancing act is hard. And sometimes the family, you're all in doing all that, and everything else is out. Other times you're all in. The last 2 Olympics, I've gone by myself, and this Olympics, they're coming with me.
Oh, see, that makes all the difference.
Yeah, so it blends them together rather than on the road, working in a hotel room by yourself, which can breed a lot of focus, right? Like,
yeah. Oh, that's the easy stuff in a certain way.
Yeah. And then, but now when they're with you, you're not worried about what's going on at home.
You don't feel split.
Yeah. And it's kind of all merged, and it's easier to manage the different hats when it's all together. And it's a lot more fun, because I think all these things and that we've talked about, the Marv Dunphy, the Eric Fonoimoana, the coaching and the assistant coach who I mentioned, it's all about experiencing it together and with someone, and that makes the experience so much more fulfilling.
Yeah. You're a parent, and if your son says, I like sports, I'll do it, but I'm not I don't want to be a hardcore athlete. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we put him in so many things early. I think like basketball at the YMCA and at the park, this and baseball and soccer. And then he kind of got to a point where he was just like, I think I want to take a break. And we were like, that's fine, that. And then you start thinking, like, I didn't start playing organized sports till like 3rd, 4th grade, and he's not even in the 1st grade.
Yeah.
So we definitely took a step back there, but we always had the plan of, hey, we'll introduce you to sports and we'll try to facilitate as much as we can so that you can play what you want to play, but you get to pick, and we don't want to push them down any route. I think just giving the options, and then they're going to gravitate to what they like. Is that how you see it turned out for you?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. I've said this many times. Sometimes I wish I did orchestrate and push and, do it a different way, because I was putting my filter of what success was for Laird and I on my kids, because that's what kind of saved us individually was our sports. And Laird's is different because he has a relationship with his sport. I mean, nobody can tell him no, right? He's still going.
Right.
But then I realized it's their life, and that's the hardest thing. So I wonder, when you see parents, because you mentioned earlier you deal with parents, if you could give them advice, because I think people do get nutty. They have these kids in 5th grade, and you're like, take it easy. Is there as somebody who's reached the highest level in every pursuit of their sport, like you have, what advice would you give them as far as, kind of having their kid participate?
It's hard when you are the athlete, and like you said, have reached these different pinnacles. What it's like. Usually, the parent that may have not have reached those levels is the one that's really pushing hard, because that's their ticket. Like, you're going to be a pro. Cade got invited to this tryout for a soccer club. Yeah. And the coach was very straightforward. This is not AYSO. This is serious. This is this. This is this. This is this. And I respected that. But at the end of the day, Maeve and I were like, this is a little much.
Your childhood.
Yeah, and it's like all this traveling and all this, like, once you buy in, like, you're in. And to put that on like 5 and 6-year-olds didn't really make a lot of sense. But the fascinating thing was some of the parents, because when you're in that kind of circle for a second or at practices, they talk, and they're like, oh, I drive up from St. Clemente, 3 times a week to practice here, and then we have games on the weekends and the thing, and like, you're like, oh my gosh, this is wild. So it's scary how some parents are approaching their kid's career, and I just think there's plenty of time later. I think I started playing volleyball at like 11, and you don't have to play at 4 and 5, and it's way. And I use this in coaching, and I tell people this often. As a coach, if I want it more than the players, we're in a really bad place.
Yeah.
Really, like if you don't want it more than I want it, like I, number one, have to downshift for sure, because all you're going to do is rebel against me pushing you too hard. And it's the same with the parent. The more the parent's like, oh, let's go here, the kid's going to be like, no, let's do something else.
Yeah.
Let's do something else. And that almost comes full circle to our conversation of we're talking about the empowerment. Give them the say. Yeah. Give them that agency to where they're in control. And once you have that control and you're empowered, like, this is my decision, I'm doing this here, like, it's way more effective than, hey, let's go, we're going, here we go. And the kid's just like, well, I guess here I go.
Yeah.
So take a step back and really listen to what the child has to say, and like, how much are they really enjoying it? And if they're loving it, because there are kids that love it.
A dog with a bone, man. They want to do it.
It's not a blanket statement.
It's fun,
yeah.
right?
And like you said, every interaction has to be intuitive to that situation.
So in wrapping this up, I don't want to lose the opportunity just to even do some nuts and bolts questions. Injuries. I feel like you've been pretty healthy your whole career.
Yeah, I've never had any surgeries.
Oh my God.
Fortunately.
Did you, I know a lot of it's genetics, your patterns. If you moved correctly, you didn't wear out the wrong joints at the wrong time. But did you have, as far as like your food, even when you were competing, did you have kind of a rules that you were living by as far as your food and things like that?
I would just always try to eat healthy. I wasn't like, none of this, none of this, none of that. It was just, staying away from the fast food, staying away from the fried food, staying away from the BS carbs, stuff like that.
Do you have that as a coach too with your girls?
Yeah, and we have a nutritionist as well. It's hard at that age because you can consume everything.
And you're ripped.
Yeah.
You're like, look at me.
Like, what are you talking about? Why do I need to change my diet?
Yeah.
So if the athlete doesn't understand the performance component of it, because it's not the aesthetic.
Hasn't hit him yet.
It's not the aesthetic component, it's the performance. Like, you want to feel good at 20 all and
low inflammation and recovery and all these things. So is that more of a conversation though at the college level?
Yeah, we have that. We have those conversations. We have a nutritionist where the athlete can do a lot of one-on-one with them. We're always pushing fueling correctly. For some players it goes in one ear and out the others. Some really embrace it. But it's so important to take care of your body, but at that age, it's hard to know. And your question about me, I think I'm lucky as well. I took care of my body and whatnot, but I also think that I was fortunate not.
But I feel like your wife is serious.
Yeah.
I feel like because I met her and I sort of thought, oh, she's somebody who might be serious about a lot of things.
Yeah.
Like, is there some rules at your house about kind of how we're eating?
No?
No,
she's not that serious. I mean, she's very healthy.
Yeah.
But she doesn't push that,
No, but just kind of, I got from her that you said, yoga instructor, she's informed. I know she, reads and sees a lot of things because we had a 5-minute conversation.
Yeah. You guys ran each other in Whole Foods.
At Whole Foods.
Yeah.
In the fruits and veggies section.
There you go.
But if this, because someone looks at you and, obviously you're very healthy and you're moving around. So what about your own training and eating? Is it just kind of consistent and you don't put a lot of emphasis and thanks to the genetics, or what?
I think it's been work and it's been genetics. I think now it's so hard for me. It's so hard. Like, I struggle with what was just normal. Like, wake up, go to the gym, play basketball for an hour, go walk right off the court, lift weights. Like, that was just regular and normal. Then COVID hit. Then Cade came along, and he was at the age of, like, in the morning, you're taking him to school. So I think with coaching and with the broadcasting, with the family and everything, starts to push your priorities a little bit down the road. So do I take Cade to school at 8 in the morning, or do I go to the gym? And then you're like, well, I'm going to take him to school because this window of time is
so quick.
There's going to be a time when he's going to drive to school.
Yeah.
And then your own stuff kind of continues to get pushed. So I think the biggest thing I struggle with or battle with internally now is like getting myself to the gym. And like I feel I look okay and whatnot, but you know yourself, and you're like, you feel a certain way based on whatever that normal is for you. And so that's the biggest fight, I think, right now, is to stay ahead of the curve. And as you get older, it's almost like someone's grabbing you and pulling you back, like not letting you take off, because there's so many things in life that start to stack up, and then it becomes a prioritizing type of a deal. And I think we all struggle with that, and I think we all will put ourselves sometimes on the bottom to take care of things. And so there are times when you have to be selfish and take care of yourself, or the flip side of that is bad health and you're not around.
Yeah. So in the final question, because you are even keeled, you are a person, I think, who naturally kind of avoids a lot of the peaks and valleys. You seem like that. But do you have any practices, because you do have a stressful life and there's a lot of moving pieces, and you're performing in all of these ways at a high level? Is there anything you do? Is it, run, walks, meditation? Are there practices, even if it's in your car, that you do that helps you kind of let the pressure out? Because it starts to accumulate.
Yeah, I like doing meditations like daily, and I've messed around with like Headspace and the Calm apps, and those things work. It's just taking time to set aside to like reset, relax, maybe unplug for a second. I think that is a form of recharging. I love like the breathing exercises, the box breathing, the 4 seconds inhale and hold, and that whole thing, which I'm sure you're totally familiar with. And sometimes just taking some big deep breaths. It's funny how we don't do so many things, and you almost have to consciously do some things that can reset.
Yeah.
So I used to, I met Maeve in yoga class, and I used to have yoga as a weekly regimen when I was playing. I think that probably helped with some injury prevention as well. But now, like, I would say lately, the first response would be like, I don't have time for that. I don't have an hour yoga class time, but you do have it. You just have to prioritize it, and you have to maximize the day. So I'm learning, I'm getting better, but the family, the work, and I think I have some balance there, but I'm always trying to be better, whatever it is that I'm doing. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but I'm driven like that. I think you're driven like that as well, trying to see what's next. And when you do something, you probably question it, like, oh, I could have done a little better. I could have done this a little better. But I think most people need to understand that that's normal, and you don't need to beat yourself up about it.
You said a couple things too that I just want to highlight before we wrap up. You talked about managing when you show up, the game that you showed up with. Mm-hmm. I thought this is really profound, because that's all of us in our everyday lives. We're showing up with who we are at that moment, whatever that looks like, and we've just got to manage that. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was something that was really important and wise. And the other thing you said, and this pertains to athletics, but this also, I think, pertains to life, which is you talk about when you were playing with Fonoy, it's like, hey, we're going to make the opposition earn it. And I sometimes think we have to go out and do all of these extra things. And sometimes it can also be about just don't shoot yourself in the foot, basically. And I think people sometimes believe when they see a person like you who has won so much that it's always been about that you have to be so extraordinary in every moment. But it's also that maybe you let yourself win, but also you didn't shoot yourself in the foot. Mm-hmm. And I think that is quiet, which makes me also think about all the ways that you've gone through your career. You've been pretty quiet. And I think I don't want to say it gets overlooked, but it all that goes into that, I think, is all the real lessons. Mm-hmm. And that you're showing up, you're doing the work, you're willing to learn, you have humility, mm-hmm. but you're definitely not going to be the person who I think makes the mistakes. Mm-hmm. And that gets you to all these places.
Yeah, that's a great perspective, because I'm a true believer in like stacking the days, right? Mm-hmm. Like doing the little things, like, all right, today we're not that good, but we're not going to give it away. We're just going to do what we can do and deal with what you show up. I always say, like, I know you were training to be a golfer, right?
Oh, God. Brutal.
But, sometimes you go out there and every drive's going right. And unless you are an expert, you're better off aiming left so you hit the fairway because you're driving the ball right, and having that wherewithal to recognize this is what you have today. You have this slice, and you can fight it all day, or you can make a slight adjustment and probably have a good time.
Yeah, I think you can say that about marriage. I swear to gosh. There are days like I show up and I know I'm in a certain kind of mood, and I can see Laird's kind of a certain mood, and you just go, this is what it is.
So true.
Oh, God.
It's
in every corner, it's true.
But yeah, I think that managing what you have, because some days are better than others in relationships and sports and whatever. It's just recognizing that and being conscious of it, and not. I think it's so easy to go on autopilot these days, and you have to fight it.
Yeah,
you have to fight it, and it's a constant kind of struggle to have joy.
Yeah, it's not going to land on you.
No, it's just
you got to keep working.
Exactly. So.
Well, Dain Blanton, thank you for your time. Thanks for coming up here. I know you're getting ready to go to the Olympics. And I just want to say, as somebody, again, who's watched you, from the side for a really long time, I just admire all that you have put together, because it shows the level of consistency that, for me, if you want to talk about gold medals, that is the most interesting thing. Somebody who is continuing to learn and to do great work at whatever they're doing. So I really appreciate you, and you're the reminder that athletics is so important, I think, and winning, it's great, but when you can be a champion person, it's like now we're really talking about something interesting. So I think you're just a really stellar example. So thanks, and thanks for your time.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me up here.
Yeah, and have fun with the family in Paris.
Yeah, and then we can't make it. I think when I first walked up and really looked at the surroundings, I was like, I haven't been up here in 20 some years.
Yeah.
And like you said, you've been here about 26 years.
Yeah. So.
And it's like paradise up here. So
it can be like hell too.
we have to make it less than that timing for our next visit.
You got to bring your team up.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Gabby.
Thanks, Dain. So thanks again for joining me and listening to the Gabby Reece Show. Make sure to like and subscribe so you never miss a conversation. And if anything showed up today that you find would be helpful to someone you know, pass it along and make sure to share with us what really resonated and stood out for you in this conversation. Thanks again for joining us. Keep going, and I'll see you next time.